We'll reconvene the February 27th, 2012 meeting of the District 99 Board of Education. We've been in closed session since 6:30. Votes, the roll has been taken. At this point, we'll stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item on our agenda this evening, item number 4, is the approval of minutes. We have subsections A through F. Have members of the board had an opportunity to review all of the minutes? Any corrections, clarifications, additions, or changes? If I hear none, the chair would invite a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Member Pavicic moves to approve the minutes sections A through F. Is there a second?
Second.
Member Davenport seconds. And call that vote, please.
Terry Pavicic.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Keith Mattoon.
Aye.
Julie Beckman.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Bill White.
Aye, the motion carries. The minutes are approved for the various dates as specified on the agenda. Item 5 is student perspective. Dr. McDonald, do you want to get that going for us?
Thank you, Mr. White. South High goes first.
Good evening. I'd like to introduce Alicia Sandridge. She's going to speak to you. She was a speaker at the county forum last week for African American and Hispanic students, and she's going to talk about how she was selected for that and how that went for her. So, Alicia Sandridge.
Hello, as he said, my name is Alicia Sandridge. I'm a senior at Downers Grove South High School, and I got selected for this program. I'm part of a program called ACSO, which is Afro-Academic, Cultural, Technological, Scientific Olympics, and there it's a program for African American high school students in the county of DuPage, and we every month we compete. I mean, we come together for a group and we work on our skills in like math, reading. There's a lot of different categories you can compete in, like dance, entrepreneurship, medicine, stuff like that. And next month I will be competing in oratory and dramatics. And for the past 2 years, I got chosen to go to nationals, which is Kansas City, and then I went to LA, which was a lot of fun. And one thing about it, you get to go to nationals for free. Everything's paid for except for your food, and one of our sponsors is the African American Leadership Roundtable. And so they wanted to see some of the students they were sponsoring, so I went and performed for them this past December. And one of the guys there really liked me, and he was like, "Oh, I really want you to perform at this summit." And so I performed there, and it was amazing to be there with other students like me who also want to be successful, who also like have goals for themselves. And like when I went up there, they all screamed for me and they really accepted my speech, and it was a lot of fun. And in my speech, I kind of talked about how this person, she was successful, she talked proper, but people made fun of her, her friends made fun of her as an African American student, and she in the end was like, "I don't really care what you all say, I'm still going to be successful within myself." So sending out this message to my other peers, I feel like that really helped them and strengthened them to come together and, you know, be successful no matter what other people say. In the end, it's like who you want to be, where do you want to go in life. And I thought that was a strong message to send out, and they screamed for me again, and it was a lot of but it was a lot of fun, and I'm glad I got that experience. I'm so glad I got that experience. So thank you all. Thank you.
Wait a minute. Some of us might have questions.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Are there any questions?
I do have one. What was you touched on the topic of the speech, but can you give us a little more about what it was about?
It's called What's Wrong with Black English by Rachel Jones, and she kind of just starts off with giving like different examples of her life, how she wasn't rich at all, but like how her friends like made fun of her. And she started off when she was 9 years old. She was in her bathroom, and people threatened to beat her up because they said she talked white or she talked really proper, and they didn't like that fact. But she was like, "Well, my mother said, like, when it said while you all were outside playing, I was inside reading books. I was like trying to figure out my brothers and sisters' math problems, you know, instead of like messing around outside," and that like kept her out of trouble. And So the climax of it is just, she's like, there's so many black people here who aren't that successful because they still are in that mindset of, oh, they have like a black English, you know, with the slang, and they don't know how to be professional about it. But she's like, well, within myself, I'm going to teach myself how to be successful, and I don't really care what other people say about it. I still want to be successful, and she was, and you know.
Interesting, thank you.
Yes.
Very good.
I'm not sure I heard, which year in school are you?
I'm a senior.
Good. Anybody else have any comments or questions?
So as a senior, what are your plans for next year? What do you think about that?
Yeah.
I plan to attend Illinois State University. I'm undecided at the moment, but I'm leaning more towards medicine right now. There, I plan to join the speech team and probably student council, you know, just getting involved anywhere I can. So
Good.
that's what I plan to do.
Are you on the speech team now?
Yes.
Congratulations.
And North?
Well, I'm sorry to report North had a little miscommunication, so we don't have our student perspective here. But I can tell you everything is going great at North.
Do we have any questions?
Grill you about North, huh? How do you mean that?
And congratulations on South coming in first in speech, but North came in second,
Absolutely.
which is our highest ever. So.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Thank you. You're more than welcome to stay and watch the rest of our meeting.
Or not.
Okay, the next item is the first reception of visitors. If anybody in the public wishes to address the board on a voting matter this evening, that's the normal protocol. If somebody has a special emergency or something, we can allow other speakers too. Anybody wish to address the board for the first reception of visitors?
Hi there, again. Jenny Bauman, 4500 Prince. I'm here tonight to represent my neighborhood, who is in strong opposition to the proposed parking lot at the south end of the property on the west side of Downers Grove North. First of all, I need to say that the claims to have notified the neighbors of the plans and the changes that were being discussed from whenever the houses started being bought till January of 2011 were simply feeble at best. If there was an interest in making sure that the neighborhood was informed, then the direct contact would have been made to each and every one of us in 2009 while plans were being discussed. Local news, media, websites, and blast emails are directed at those who are specifically looking for information or who have children at the schools. Our kids were were little, so that we didn't get any of those emails. Those are not directed at the regular public who have no reason to be searching the web for District 99's latest and greatest plan. And most of all, these publications were done after plans were already made. Very little was out in the public in 2009 while these plans were in the exploratory phase. I believe that it is no coincidence that the neighborhood was not informed or included in the design team until well after you all had put your plans firmly in place. You did not want our input. When we did first voice our opinion at the Plan Commission and our neighbors said that the school board was going to do what they wanted, 2 school board members shook their head adamantly and said under their breath, "That's right." That arrogant gesture to us by those 2 board members made it very clear that you were not concerned with what the neighbors felt or thought or how it affected them. In fact, my guess is that most of you have never even come out to see and try to understand the plan in reality and how it truly affects student safety. It looks really good on paper. At the last board meeting, we were given several reasons why, very simply, flipping the parking lot and the soccer field would not work. And I would like to discuss some of those issues. A lot to the north end of that property was referred as a remote, distant lot. But in fact, we are proposing a lot in the exact place that already exists, which is hardly distant. And we were told that a south lot Was the logical place for it a lot? If it was logical, why was the north lot ever placed? We were told it was an access situation, that entering the lot from the south would mean that there were still kids crossing over the street and pathway while vehicles and buses were crossing. This simply isn't at all true, and it wasn't what we were proposing. With the north lot and entrances on Sherman and Saratoga, a vacated Prince, kids would encounter nothing but green space and sidewalks on their journey from the Prince exit to the buses or parents waiting in the lot to pick up. We were told that the buses would need to make left turns off Ogden, which would cause traffic congestion. And left-hand turns are just a matter of rerouting so that it ends up being only right-hand turns. That claim was almost insulting to us. We were told that the plan for a north lot would cause a problem for deliveries happening at the dock north of the pool to the fine arts wing. I have never seen a semi pull into that dock, ever. In fact, it's only small box trucks that rarely bring items like pianos to the fine arts department, as we were informed by a school employee. Trying to say that semis use that dock is simply dishonest. If that were the case, semis would now need to have pulled into people's yards and back up into that lot. It just doesn't happen. Placing the lot, and it wouldn't affect, the claim at the other meeting was that it would affect the size of the soccer field. It wouldn't. Comparing the proposed configuration to the south lot is not the same. They have tons more space, closed off streets, and they use only a single line of buses rather than the proposed double stacking at north. They are not the same. We were also told that it would be very difficult to modify parent behavior when discussing a north lot. But when the south lot was being discussed, you would be able to control how parents were picking up and dropping off their kids. How is it that the school board is willing to help when they have the lot to the south, but that it's impossible when the lot is to the north? It's contradictory. The bottom line is that the board and the school didn't even realize that there was a problem until a few months ago when we brought it up. And because the plans were solidified 14 months ago, this problem is not even addressed in the master site plan. There is no plan for the safe pickup and drop off of kids for extracurricular activities that happen on off-school regular day hours. There is no plan. Tons of propaganda to gain public support around the safety of the buses for 20 minutes after school under adult supervision, but no plan for many, many hours of nonstop car and pedestrian traffic. Finally, my gut tells me that the only way to have gotten a drastic change in the current scenario is to have had some say back in 2009, and that you're going to plow through without considering the ramifications to the neighborhood or without consideration for the hundreds of students dashing in and around cars. Moving forward, not a single one of you will ever be able to say that they didn't know that there were safety issues out there. When someone gets hurt, I hope that you are held accountable. I know that I will be there from my home with a bird's eye view of the chaos. My eyes, my cameras, my video will be very accurately documenting the constant danger you are going to be enhancing in my front yard. I'm just going to end by saying you've put a lot of propaganda out there supporting your half-hearted effort for safety, but I really believe that your efforts are really clearly to improve the facilities, which I applaud, but don't put it under the guise of safety. I'll make sure from my point that safety isn't forgotten.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else in the audience wish to address the board?
Good evening. My name is Roger Bellman. I also live at 4500 Prince Street. It's at the direct intersection of the center of this project that's going in for Downers Grove North. I honestly believe that the project underestimates the needs of the school right now and in future for this area. I live at the intersection. I see it after all of you go home in the evening, and I don't need a traffic study or any other document to tell me what goes on there at night. I see it, I live it. It really doesn't get addressed well. The school points to the police point to the school. We have gotten some support and some help recently, but I don't see any long-range plan for that area beyond what's currently in front of us right now, and that really is a shortfall of the whole process. It's very disappointing. I believe in one of the articles, it stated something to the fact that we're just a few neighbors. Well, those few neighbors are also citizens and people that have kids going to school just like you. And it's really unfortunate that a project, I believe in the $14 million range, it can't honestly come to some middle ground between what the needs of the neighborhood and the needs of the school are. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we'll close the first reception of visitors. Move on to item 7, recommendations and reports to the superintendent. First item is A, it's all about learning.
Thank you, Mr. White. The first report will be about the Read 180 program, which is a intensive reading improvement program that the district implemented in the 2010-11 school year to support students coming into the system who are least able readers. And tonight's presentation is going to be made by Pete Tice, Gina Zaccardi, both associate principals, and Dr. Judy Miner, assistant superintendent.
Good evening. I will talk a little bit about Read 180 in terms of what the program is, and then we'll share with you some information about our stories in terms of students and some data with you. Read 180 is an intensive, very comprehensive, research-based reading program. It's an intervention for students, grades 4 through 12. It's been in existence for decades, and it basically targets students that are reading at least 2 years below level. So our students at both North and South High School are at least 2 years below where they should be in reading. It is a double-blocked class, which means that students are in there for 100 minutes a day for 2 periods back to back. It serves as both their English class and a reading class. And that is to be on model. You need to have enough time. That's why we double block the class. It has all kinds of components to it, and one major component is that it allows teachers as well as students to monitor progress. There is constant feedback for students, constant data collection. Students can see the progress that they're making as well as the teacher. The model that we're using, the on model, is what Scholastic calls on model, requires 4 different segments: a whole group instruction, computer-based instruction, small group direct instruction with a teacher, and then independent reading on the part of students.
We'll keep moving this up and down. What you see here on the screen is visual representation of this online model that Gina just talked about, where you have the teacher beginning the lesson with direct instruction to the students in what they call their whole group instruction. Here they may be working on vocabulary acquisition, they may be working on writing skills, oral communication, and then they segue into the small group rotation. And we'll talk about each of these in the subsequent slides. But each segment there is about 20 minutes in length for the students as they rotate through those 3 programs. And then it concludes again with a whole group segment of the class where it will be a wrap-up and closing instruction for the lesson.
What you see here is the small group rotation. Those are actually 2 South students and Blair Cavino, a reading specialist. In the small group rotation, they basically work with a few students, anywhere from 3 to 4 students typically, and it's truly differentiated instruction. This allows the time for the teacher to really focus on the needs of each individual student. It allows time for the teacher to meet with the student, to talk about progress, to actually conference about how the student is doing.
The next rotation is on the computer with their instructional software. And here again, it's differentiated in that the system monitors the student's progress and accuracy and pacing and moves the student through the program accordingly. The more they get correct, the better their comprehension, and they start making the passages that the students are reading more difficult. And so that's where you start to see the gains occurring in that Lexile reading score that you'll hear more about later.
The third rotation is independent reading, and that is literally what it is. students have the choice of which book they would like to read from the Read 180 library. Now, the books are leveled by Lexile, so there's different reading levels for students, and students read basically books that are at or slightly above their reading level. But they're able to choose from those books at those levels. They read independently and they log what they've read. They basically answer some questions about them to keep them thinking about what they're reading, focusing on what they're reading, and really ensuring that they comprehend what it is they're reading.
And then besides the hard data that we'll show you here in just a couple of minutes, we asked the Read 180 teachers at both campuses to give us some anecdotal feedback about what they've seen in this program so far. So on the screen here you see some quotes, if you will, of various instructors from both North and South. The first one talks about students who normally would not be interested in grades based on rubrics or what they call teacher's opinion, are motivated by the numbers that they see in that software that they're working on, where they have very quick, accurate, immediate feedback to how well they are doing. And this helps motivate these students to continue working in that program. The second one talks about students lighting up with joy when they see the progress they're making. And we have to remember, these are students who are 2 grades below level. So these are struggling readers who oftentimes probably have not enjoyed reading in the past, who are now taking pride in the personal success that they're seeing. And the third comment is similar. That students who do not normally read are now enjoying reading, and many of these students talk about what they're reading with other students either in this class or outside of this classroom because they're enjoying it so much.
As Pete said, these are students that are at least 2 years below grade level in terms of reading. So you can imagine how rewarding it is for parents to have their child actually enjoy reading. How rewarding it is for parents to see the results of their student in the program. And so we've heard from several parents, I personally have spoken to several parents who are just so happy to have the program and with the results that they're seeing of their child, and their child coming home talking about class in a positive way. I think another important part of this program is it really is building the foundation for success. The vast majority of the students in the program are freshmen. This is their first experience at South High in terms of reading and English. And it's building that foundation because they are making progress. Judy will share with you in just a little bit some of the data, and you'll see that progress. And success breeds success. And so students are getting off to a great start. We've seen that the majority of students, the vast majority, I should say, of students that were in Read 180 last year, now as sophomores, first semester, are doing quite well in their English classes, and the vast majority of them are in the general level. So here they came several grade levels below and are able to be successful. And one last note I'll share is that we're very excited because on Thursday, Scholastic, which is the company that makes Read 180, will be coming to South High to actually film our teachers in action. We were one of 2 schools selected nationwide to be part of a training video because of the exemplary teaching they're seeing. So we're very pleased to have them come and learn what we're doing. Thank you.
Very good.
You've heard Pete and Gina talk about the qualitative kind of evidence. What I'm going to share with you is more of the quantitative evidence, and this is provided by Scholastic. So not only do we get a student-by-student feedback on a real-time basis, but we also get programmatic feedback. And so this is our semi-annual update for you. Prior to looking at what this year's results are to date, last year's evidence of success, we had 59% of the students that participated last year had 2 or more years of reading growth. So over almost 60% of the students had achieved and made that leap in terms of their literacy. 76% had at least 1 year's reading growth by the end of the year. And I'm going to emphasize by the end of the year because we have some really exciting data for our semi-annual report. And both schools had an average growth level of at least 2 years. So that's really key as to the implementation and the hard work that the teachers are doing in the classroom, the fidelity to the program. Both schools averaged at least a 2 years growth for their students. As for this year, our semi-annual report speaks to these kinds of evidences of success. 29% of the students had already achieved at least 2+ years of reading gain during the time frame. And you'll see at the bottom, important note, I'll reiterate that more than once. This was only in 8 weeks in the program.
My gosh.
For the rest of the students, 49% and from South and 43% at North had at least a 1+ years reading gain, again, in 8 weeks in the program. This is a very busy slide, and I usually don't like to put them up, but if you look at the green part, it does say of all the students, currently 47 have already had at least 1 year of growth, but I'm going to put my little laser here because in 8 weeks, if you look, these are our superstars. These students have achieved 3 years of growth. Here is a cluster of students achieving at least 2 years of growth, again, in 8 weeks. And then these students here have achieved at least 1 year of growth. And they didn't list all of the students. They only took the top 40. So we had more than just 40 do that well, almost half that are currently in the program. So we're incredibly proud of our students and incredibly proud of our staff in getting these kinds of results in such a short time. Realizing time is tight, we just wanted to let you know this is a halftime report. There's still more learning to come, and we look forward to sharing those results with you at the end of this year.
Any questions for any of our presenters this evening?
My question.
Mr. McKeon?
With so much growth early in that 8 weeks of time, what would you attribute that to? I mean, is it something the students aren't getting? Or do they have a certain foundation when they come in, but something's not quite clicking? I mean, you know, what's your expertise on that?
It's a very individualized program in many ways. There's that ongoing feedback, which, you know, just like sometimes the games kids play, that automatic feedback, I'm doing well, you want to keep going on. It's called zone of proximal development. So if you just a teaser, they want to continue participating. So that's the one key piece. Also, students have choice, and reading choice is a real key dynamic, and if I feel that I can make a choice as to what I want to read and I'm having success in it, that's why I want to do it ever more so. So I think those are two key pieces related to the program.
Thank you.
Judy, doesn't the Read 180 program exist in some of our feeder school districts?
I'm not sure as to that. There is another level called System 44, but I'm not sure as to the specifics if our feeders do have that. The System 44 is a lower level with more phonemic awareness, sounding out things, so that would be something I would check.
I thought 58 was doing something similar, because one thing that makes me wonder, if we have students that are achieving such success in such a short amount of time, I'm wondering, I mean, why wasn't this taken care of before these students came to us? They're most of them are freshmen. This seems like you're wondering, you know, these students could have had more success earlier on with the proper intervention. And so, are we having any discussions with some of our feeder school districts about this?
What we typically do, and currently now we're engaging with our sender schools to look at those students who have a certain Explore score, which is one of the pieces that we look for EPAS growth. Students that score below a certain benchmark amount, we then have them tested with our performance series reading, and that gives us additional insights into areas related to reading. If a student is shown to have some discrepancies in that they need some additional help, they're slotted before they even come into the Read 180 program, so they do have that support and they can get off on the right leg, so they're ready to go.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I wonder if part of that is a certain level of transfer students who come in.
That would also be another
who would not have
piece
been
to
part of
assess.
whatever programs.
Right.
It's a wonderful program, my goodness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, well, for 3 years of growth for the top students is
Exciting.
Amazing.
that's really good. Anything else? Okay, well, thank you. Then we'll look forward to the end of your report too. This is only halfway. So.
Halfway.
Yes. Wow.
Okay, the next item, 7B, Downers Grove Stormwater Utility Presentation.
Thank you, Mr. White. We're pleased to have with us Mr. David Fieldman, who is a village manager for the Village of Downers Grove. As the board is aware, because I have sent them a number of pieces of information, the Village of Downers Grove is considering an initiative called the Stormwater Utility, and have two purposes really tonight. One is to get a sense of the village's perspective from Mr. Fieldman, and then to allow an opportunity for the board to dialogue about each individual board member's position on this concept. I think the idea is that the village would like us to present a letter, or the school board to present a letter to the village about its position, either pro or con or uncertain, and that's where we're going tonight. So, Mr. Fieldman, welcome, and
thank you.
Welcome your presentation.
Actually, I'd like your indulgence, please. I'm really feeling kind of sick right now, and I'd actually like if you could maybe just give me a couple minutes, maybe go on to the next agenda item and see how I'm feeling in just a couple minutes. I would appreciate that.
Okay, we can skip over, go to the next one. Okay.
Okay, we'll go to discussion of school fees.
Yes.
And as a board, from previous meeting in January, we have discussed school fees, and Mr. Stalen has developed some materials to review for the board. And Mr. Davenport also has materials that he developed to discuss with the board, and so the idea is to review both of those pieces of information and then also have a dialogue among the board prior to the administration coming back with recommendations to the board about school fees for the 2012-13 school year. Mr. Stalen?
Okay, if we could get to the section of fees and maybe put up the chart up.
Which chart?
Or if you can pull it up on your iPads.
Okay.
This is the
Printed it.
data that I compiled. Actually, there was schools are constantly surveying each other, and I have one that was partially complete with several of our other two-page high schools in it, and so I just picked up on that to try and get this quickly, because sometimes it takes a while to get this information back from everybody.
Become the mic, please. Closer to the microphone, please.
Oh, sure. And so what I wanted to do was get some information about the other DuPage High School districts, just some more information. I gave you some information at the last meeting, or just to show you the impact of what change in a particular fee what that impact would be to the school in terms of revenue. And so this is just a comparison of other high schools. And actually, I'm going to move off of the chart and actually go to the matrix just to show you what I've done there. I should start with that, really. The original survey that I received just had information for that orange column, which is a total registration fee example. But what I wanted to do was isolate the athletic fee only because that is a variable that not every student participates in that, and I think I heard at least one member saying there was no real issue with the athletic fees. It was more just the total curricular fee that we had, and so I wanted to give it to you both ways. And so I sliced it a different way, adding a separate column, which in green, which really excludes the any athletic fee in this particular example. And it is very difficult to get an apples and apples comparison between schools because there are so many different methodologies used, and they've all, particularly in the area of course fees, which is the third column to the right of the green column. There's a range of fees for different courses. Some use a very specific fee that is for a particular course. It might be $1 amount. For another course, it'd be a different dollar amount, and it's adjusted each year. District 99 and several of the others use just a flat fee, kind of an average fee, just for ease of administration, actually. We don't really have that much of a sliding change. There are some courses that I think lifeguard certification this year will be one where the fees for that are going to be very high, which would give them a certain certification for lifeguarding, which is a change. And so we probably will have a separate fee for that, just because only a certain number of kids will want to do that. And we wouldn't want to charge the $23 fee for what might be like a $60 cost to the school for just a few kids that want to have certification for their own purposes. So so there's a lot of different variation that happens between schools. So we put this one together asking each board member to please be very careful and just assume a particular course of study for a junior high school student, and what would that fee be? And so then it allows them to take an average science class lab or an average English fee if they have it. And so it got a little more precise and I think a little bit more comparable, but there still could be variations between. These are just the business manager's best guess of that scenario. And if you see the bottom line on the matrix there, that explains that this would be a total registration fee, an example for a junior with a schedule consisting of science, math, English, history, Spanish, PE, one elective, and one sport. And again, the sport is in the orange column, the without sport athletic is in the green. And now if you go to the chart, I mean, I think what the graph shows you, and me at least, that our fees right now are reasonable. We're without athletic fees, we're the third lowest in terms of curricular fees for this particular example, and it could change, it could be different, but I think we're, even if we go to the with athletic fees, we're right in the ballpark of where 5 of the 7 schools are at. And so I think what this did is it just reinforced what we believe, because we do monitor this every couple of years, and we hear about changes in other fees, and we kind of always knew we would be right in the middle of the pack or average for DuPage County. And so it helped, it's one more tool for us to understand where we sit with the rest of the schools, and just to see if we're unreasonable or at a level that needs adjustment because we're out of sync with the norm for the county and for these other schools. And so just a little bit more information for you to have for discussion. I know I gave you a memo along with this. And the key part to that is that it's still not a recommendation of the administration at this point in time to actually reduce our fees. It's our recommendation to keep them the same and not increase them. But until we get things resolved with the state of Illinois and whether they're going to either reduce revenue or push down expenditures to the local schools and the local taxpayers, we don't know what's going to happen yet. And so it seems a little too soon to make an adjustment downward in the fees until we get that bigger problem resolved and get that. And so possibly, if we get the things knocked out at the state level and we know what that impact will be and we find a way to deal with it, then we could take a look at our fees again. It could very well be that if we have to absorb $2.8 million, which is one number that's been calculated for our district, just a theoretical number, if we were to have to absorb all of the state's current portion of the pension increase, we would have to go back and probably raise fees or cut programming. And in the past, the Board of Education has decided they would trim some things, but by and large they would rather increase fees, like athletic fees primarily is where we would go with some of that, but possibly course fees. They wanted to keep the programming and keep the opportunities for the students, as long as our fees were still reasonable and within the same range of other schools, comparable schools. And so that's why I'm just giving you this information. And that's something that until we get that resolved with the state, I'm very reluctant to suggest that. Now, obviously, you have the opportunity to discuss this, and then in March, I'd like to take your comments, the information you provide tonight through discussion and your positions, discuss it with the administration at each building and central administration, and come up with a recommendation in March based on what we talk about tonight.
Anything else from the administration on this? And the idea now is to have discussion from board members.
Actually, Mr. Davenport prepared some information
Oh, good.
too.
Okay.
The information
To share it.
Yeah, sure. The information I put together was just some information that I came across that was similarly a gathering of fees at different districts, many more districts, in addition to some of the high school districts. And as well, I don't believe they're all just DuPage County either. Only wanted that information included so that the rest of my board members would see what I was looking at in terms of a bigger picture.
Is that what this is?
It's
It was
it's the other documents.
PDF?
Yes. Yeah, fees,
Okay.
PDF, right,
Oh, okay.
right. And
All
it's
right.
just, you know,
Okay.
my cut and paste.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, I wasn't quite
So-
sure what that was when.
Well, it was,
Okay.
I know it was
Came
put in
from.
our documents,
Right.
you know, without much explanation. And I got it pretty last minute and asked it to be included in the packet so that we had that information. So, so hopefully you had a chance to look at it a little bit in advance, and I don't really need to offer any commentary on it other than the fees are what they are, and I think that in terms of a position, if we want to start that conversation off, I was looking for us to, as we look at the curve that we've had over the years, I agree with what Mr. Stalins said, that the past boards have looked at using a combination of fees and some cuts to try to balance the budget in tougher economic situations for the school district. But knowing that there's no limit to what fees we can charge, I mean, there's no cap on it at all. We could charge $1,000 for registration fees. So clearly, there's some sort of balancing between perception of what we believe our families in our school district can bear in terms of the cost, and what we, you know, how that works with our budget. I'd say that the last several years has been pretty tough on people economically, and I understand that at this point, given the unknowns going forward with the state, it'd be hard to make I think you used the word meaningful sort of reductions, but and I would tend to agree with that. I think that it would be very hard for us to just cut fees and without looking at possibly some other things that we have to cut. I say that with this caveat. I know that we were able to use some monies this past year to help pay down some debt, correct? And I think that if these registration fees hadn't been in place, some of these fees, we just wouldn't have been able to pay down as much of that debt. And that's kind of the balancing act I see going forward, knowing that that's still part of our projection, correct? That we're hopeful that next year we're able to pay down. It was something to the tune of like $700,000 in the I forget, 715,000. And so
Well, we paid off some existing debt.
Yeah.
That was a one-time event. The ongoing event is we've committed, as long as we can do it, to paying for the HVAC program at the South Campus. That's about $1.3 million a year that we've committed. And if we weren't to do that, we would have to go to issuing taxes to pay that debt off. So that's why it was the alternative to issuing debt service extension-based bonds and financing the project with taxing bonds. So just to make it clear,
Okay.
so the $700,000 was a one-time
One-time, okay.
reduction in other callable bonds that we had,
Very good.
callable debt certificates.
So I'm looking at it in terms of a trend. The trend's been up, and I'd like to see the trend start going down. So whatever that amount is, it might not be much, but that's what I'd like to see start happening. I think that charging fees for just walking in the door and having your child get a public education, I have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with fees for things that are in addition to, such as some of the athletic programs and such that we have, or choosing to take an AP course and there being a fee associated with that. I think those are things that we don't owe the student necessarily in terms of the basic education. Those are things that you elect to do, and so I see where there's a, it makes sense to have a fee associated with that. But in terms of the registration fees, I'd like to see a reduction in those going forward. I understand, though, that we can't, to make some sort of big cut right now would be a hard thing on our budget, given the plans that we've made going forward, and I'm not willing to suggest something right now that we ought to give up. So at the very least, clearly in not support of any sort of increase going forward. And I would like to see some sort of decrease, even if it's the amount, even if it's $5 or $10, knowing that that's setting us on a trend moving forward, that we can eventually get it down further, so that we can be the low guy on that graph and be proud of that fact. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Other board members have a perspective on this? Mrs. Beckman?
I think in one way, first of all, I do agree. I don't think we can do anything right now until we know what the state's going to do. But in one way, with inflation being the way it is, if we freeze fees, it almost is. You could interpret it as kind of a decrease if you look at it that way. And I understand it's a real burden on our families, but to decrease them and possibly put more of a burden on our taxpayers, if we aren't allowed to continue with the HVAC funding we're doing, that's not good either, if you spread the costs out to the entire populace. So it's a tough situation, it really is, but I think right now we need to hold the line until we see what the state's doing. And we do still have the program for those who really can't afford them, for the free and reduced lunch people. Mm-hmm.
Other thoughts, Mr. Mattoon?
Yeah, I would like to associate myself with Member Davenport's sentiments. And, I think, we know that the state has been in this type of financial situation for a couple of years. This is not something that's new to us. And I think we should have some courage to reduce by $10, $20 to at least show something, in a good faith effort. I think the way that I see it, as a parent and as somebody who went to Downers North, I'm afraid that we're going to become like the airlines and start charging a kid to use a locker, hidden bag fee, this, that, and when you're accustomed to normal functions of a school. And, I'm looking at parking, $175 for parking a year. I'm asking myself, do you get valet for that? That's quite, what are the kids getting for $175? For instance, I think we can do a better job going to $240, $235. It's not a lot of money times the 5,500 students that we have at North and South High School. I think we owe that to our taxpayers. And at the same time, I think that's an incentive for us as a board and as an administrative group to be creative. There has to be alternative and creative sources of funding, whether it's grant money that we can apply for, whether it's sponsorship, naming rights. I said before, and I'm on record, I did not have to pay any athletic fees when I was a student. I don't think the students should have to as well, if we can find a creative alternative. But I do, agree with Member Davenport that it is extracurricular. I understand the cost, driver's ed, summer school. I'm with that. But I think we should have a little more courage and find some ways, because the state predicament with the budget is not new. This did not happen overnight, and I think that we in our community can be a little more creative.
Other members? Ms. Pavicic?
Yes. I'll address a couple of things that Member Mattoon said. For one thing, the cost of athletics has changed considerably since you were there.
Wasn't that long ago.
Well, it's been more than 10 years. Yes, it has. So things are a little different, and the cost of things are a little different. Plus, in looking at our tax base, most of our taxpayers do not have students in our buildings. And for them to take the lion's share of the difference in cost, because we're still going to need to get the money from somewhere. I don't think that that's quite the way to get it. And I think our parents and students need to have a little skin in the game. When they pay fees, there's some responsibility there. And so I don't see a problem with charging fees. And I don't think we should increase the fees, but I think that leaving them where they are right now is a good alternative. But I don't want to burden our taxpayers, the majority of our taxpayers, with more. And I don't think that that's right either. And you know, with the fees of different classes and things, it doesn't cover the whole cost of what many of those lab fees and all that do have. And so I think that we're being very fair, and especially when you look at the books, you know, I know you're not there yet, but I've been paying 8 years of book fees for my college students. And this last semester, my daughter had an $800 book fee.
Yeah.
And of that, she's probably going to get maybe $50 back. And looking at the way some of these schools do work, I believe that they work on that same program. And so those are hidden fees that many of our parents are having to pay, those parents are having to pay, and ours do not, because we include that in that initial fee. So I think in some respects our parents are getting a pretty good deal. So that's my feeling.
Oh, sure, and I don't disagree. Just quick clarification. I do not want to pass the fees on to our taxpayers. I want us to find some alternative. You know, if we can find some creative alternative.
Yeah, I think sometimes those alternatives are not as easy to find as.
I'm not saying they're easy, but I think that a good faith effort to investigate, I think, would really serve our district very well.
Mrs. Boyle, did you want to add to this discussion?
Think about it for just a little bit.
Okay. Then I'll go ahead and I'll comment that I do like Mr. Salin's suggestion that we evaluate consolidating the fees, because I find it a little difficult sometimes to figure out what's what, and I'm not sure that book fees and lab fees necessarily correspond. Just anecdotally, you know, my own daughter was able to use Kindle that was allowed for the AP Lit class this year, and many of the books, quite frankly, are off copyright, so they're free. You know, and it's perfectly legal to be free because they're off copyright.
There's an alternative.
You know, so use that. So as we look to consolidate or rationalize some of the fees where, you know, if you're buying a dozen novels, that could be expensive, but maybe now that's not as, you know, so to take a look at that. I also concur, though, that between now and March, there really isn't time to get that done. So to look at that going forward is something that I'm concerned about. What concerns me about the budget and the reducing of the fees is that we are, well, some of the favorable financing we have could be lost if we need to find cuts. So that's why we want to look real carefully. You know, I'm not at all opposed to looking into that, but I'm not certain we can do that in the next month. Identify things that we can cut to offset a significant reduction in fees. We just won't be able to find, and to cut it without it, and to reduce fees without identifying a corresponding reduction in expenses would not be prudent, in my opinion. Although this is not a decision evening. As far as a symbolic reduction, $5, $10, I'm on the fence, and I'm not ready to make a decision about that this evening. That's basically, you know, again, I don't want anybody to think discussion, people should take a hard and fast view of everything, you know, because this is not a decision evening. This is for an initial exploration of thoughts and all of an open mind if anybody wants to talk to me about it. Do you want to add something, or do you want to go on to the next meeting? Or? No? Anybody feel they want to say anything they haven't said? Again, this is not a decisional item. We're just trying to let the administration have a sense where various board members stand on this. Okay. Textbooks.
Thank you, Mr. White. Every year, the administration brings forth new textbooks to the Board of Education. There's a process that goes on throughout the year involving teachers, department heads, administration, and central administration in identifying and selecting these books. They were brought to the Board of Education to be put on public display. I think the policy requires 30 days. Because of the timing of the next board meeting will be less than 30 days. Frankly, we are putting these books on display for the months of March and up until the April board meeting. Dr. Miner has prepared a list of materials, and she's going to make a brief presentation. Just to keep in mind, there are a couple of books that we would like to bring forward for 2012-13. We're not going to present those tonight because we do not have the most recent. There's apparently been a change in edition since we started the process. The new edition is not ready for display. We should have that within a week or so, but we would bring that to the board in March. So Dr. Miner.
To reiterate what Dr. McDonald had said, this has gone through an extensive process. It usually takes about a year's worth of time. Textbooks are reviewed to align with the curricular goals as well as state and Common Core standards in some cases. They're also reviewed for Lexile levels. You're hearing that a lot today, but again, to make sure that the textbooks is providing an adequate resource for our students. You'll note the dates for public display pending the preliminary approval today would be on display through the 16th here at the ASC, and we have copies of those. And then it'll be raised again at the April 16th board meeting for the final approval. The legal notices will be posted at the respective newspapers as listed there, as well as posting at the public libraries in the local area. The textbooks that we currently have reviewed for career and technical education, fashion merchandising has a textbook called Fashion Marketing. The 2006 copyright date is the most recent textbook for that particular edition, so even though it seems dated, that's the best we can get at this point. Intro to Business class as an Intro to Business textbook, again 2008 copyright, that's the most updated date. For our new dramatic literature course, we have the Bedford Introduction to Drama 2009 and World Languages German 4, as well as AP German Denkmal, that's a 2012 copyright date. We have a French textbook. We're anticipating the copyright for that is 2013 again. We had reviewed the 2008 edition. They're just slight variations for the 2013, but we want to make sure that if we're investing around $75 a copy, we want to make sure that we have the most recent as well as the most recent supplemental pieces, more computer software and things like that. So that'll be brought to you at a subsequent board meeting so that we have the 30-day lead time, which is required by school code.
So what books are we going to look at? Can you just maybe give us a brief view of what other books are going to be coming in when you get the new editions?
That would be the French book, and there's potentially a CTE book, but I'm still awaiting on that. But
For
I
technical
do know
education.
Right. The Denkmal book had been, the French book, the teachers had approved the sequence of the series, but we're looking at the actual French 2 books. So even though the series had been approved, we're waiting for that 2013 edition to come in, and then we'll present that to you in a subsequent meeting.
Okay. Other questions from the board? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. Electric contract renewal?
Mr. Stalen is going to give the board good news about contract for electric rates for the next several years.
All right, and this was just an informational item. The board doesn't have any action on this particular item, but what we did do, Marty and I work with a broker, and we're watching the electric rates. We had a 3-year electric contract in place, which gave us a nice guaranteed rate. And I think many of you might be getting hit by different power companies telling you to buy your electricity separately from ComEd. It's, in general, that's a good idea to look into, and I would recommend you do that. That savings actually was already built into our rate, because the long-term rates had anticipated deregulation and then anticipated that, and we bought it separately from ComEd already. So that's not the savings we're seeing here. This is actually just a dip in the long-term market. We were watching it. It looked like it was really low. So we picked it up and actually locked it into a 5-year commitment, just to lock in our budget for a long period of time. And we think it's a nice, stable move for us. Should save about $116,000 a year. The rate itself is locked in. There's this very tiny part of that that's not. That's still variable, but it shouldn't change by more than 0.5% in terms of overall savings. And we're just really pleased with it. We thought we'd pass along, because later on I'll be talking to you about how we already are planning to spend that money in technology. I know we could have probably reduced fees, but I think we also have things we want to add. And I think the Kindle is an excellent idea, not to jump back into that topic too much, but I think we may be going there, and I think there may be a fee involved with that if we were to give everybody a Kindle. But anyways, I'll get off that topic. We just wanted you to know this is a longer commitment we've normally taken. Usually we do 3-year commitments. This is a 5-year lock, so we wanted the board to be aware of it. That's all.
Any questions on this topic?
That's great.
Okay, master site plan report? Update or
Okay.
update?
This report actually has 3 parts. The first part is a review of the second phase, or the second year of the South High project, and Marty's going to do a review of that. Later in the meeting, we will ask you to approve bids for that project, and we're very pleased that, based on the bids that we have, that project will be under budget. The second part of the project, or the presentation, is a review of our plan to deal with the North High, the second year of the North High plan. And as you know, we've been trying to work around the timing of the proposed stormwater ordinance in DuPage County. And our goal was to try to have a construction plan that we could implement during 2012 that would enable us to avoid the cost, unless someplace down the line the county actually decides not to change its ordinance. We're hopeful that does not occur, and we received good news on Friday based on their progress. So that would be the second part of the presentation. And finally, the question of the artificial surface on the North High project. We'd like to have a discussion about that to give us some direction where the board is leaning before we make a formal recommendation in, I believe, in April, or is it March, Marty? Marty's not here. March.
Marty's
Thank
right.
you.
Or April, we're not sure yet.
And we do have some staff members from North to give detail about how that would, their artificial surface would be advantageous to us in some ways that perhaps we haven't been able to consider before. We'd like the board to have all that information before we have the discussion, and then give direction to the administration. So Marty, you're on.
As Mark mentioned, further down in the agenda is a recommendation to approve contracts for Phase 2 work at South High School. The reason I'm jumping the gun a little bit on that is we had a late developing situation about an hour and a half, 2.5 hours ago. As you'll recall, several months ago, administration mentioned that there were some options from Tier 2 work that wasn't funded, and a couple other energy conservation initiatives that we wanted to add to Tier 1 work if we could afford it, and that we would bring those back to the Board of Education in our bid packages if we felt that they stood up to scrutiny and we could afford them. With respect to the bids tonight, we have rain water harvesting as an option within that bid package. And as I'd mentioned in the agenda, we didn't have all of the information regarding the payback that a rain harvesting system would give us. Gathering water from the skies and collecting it in a detention basin and then reusing that in the irrigation system to offset domestic water costs and to allow us to water even if the domestic water isn't available. And we run into that situation on dry seasons fairly regularly. The concern we had was how many years it would take to pay back that capital cost. And we had some rough numbers that suggested that this is a good idea, not only for as a green initiative, reusing a product instead of taking domestic water and paying that high cost to use it for irrigation, but we also need to take care of our assets. A very expensive 5-acre field right behind us here needs to be rested and needs to be maintained and it needs to be watered. So we felt for those reasons this option was a good idea, but we weren't certain about the cost payback, and there was some value to cost payback. Numbers that were presented to me a couple of hours ago are not what we thought they were when we looked at them several months ago. We were able to find our energy technician is in Texas right now at a seminar, and she asked for some of the irrigation experts to run some numbers for us, and they came in different than what we'd expected. So we need to reevaluate. We need to take a look at those numbers and make sure that there is still value in rain harvesting. But the rain harvesting is in the bid right now. I'd like to leave it in there, and we can always pull it back if we determine the value isn't there. So that's the rain harvesting system. The second topic is the current plan of the implementation of Phase 2 work at North High School. And as you know, it's very complex with respect to the ordinances that require us to install and operate a stormwater management system. And we've been through the stormwater management system before. We all know that it's a tank, a very large vault underground that holds excess water from rains and discharges it downstream in a controlled fashion so we don't flood anybody downstream. The current ordinances are very restrictive, and the county has understood that for some time, and they've been attempting to lessen those restrictions and make them more reasonable. There was a good reason to be restrictive when there was room for development in DuPage County, but DuPage County is built out, and now those are so restrictive they're hurting development. And they've solved a lot of the problems with flooding in DuPage County. So the current ordinance is as Mark had mentioned, appears to be ready for as an action item with the county, and lessening some of those restrictions, which would in effect allow us to not build as many stormwater detention systems as the current ordinance requires. The problem is timing, the county approving them and then it going to the village for approval, and how that fits into our construction schedule. And we are assuming, for sake of moving forward with this project this year, that the ordinance will pass, and we will save or reduce our cost about $500,000. Now that $500,000 is in the budget. It has always been understood that we would have to build that detention system, but it was also understood that if the ordinance is changed, we'd be able to offset that work and save those dollars and use them for something else. The timing is the issue. In order for us to open school at North High School this fall, we have to have the parking lots completed. And the detention systems go under the parking lots. And we don't know if we're building detentions or not until the ordinance issue is addressed. So we have a flexible, adaptable design plan and construction schedule. And we're required to design and get permitted the detention system based on the ordinance that's in effect at the time. So that will be the more restrictive ordinance. So we will design and prepare for the detention systems. But this plan being flexible enough that when and if a decision is made at the county and village level to reduce or change or go with the less restrictive ordinance, we'll be able to change in midstream and not build the detention basins that were initially required. It's a tight timeline, but there's a little bit of risk in there perhaps, but we think we have it well organized, and we're certainly hoping that the less restrictive ordinance is passed so that we can eliminate at least one or more of those detention basins. That really takes us to the third
Marty,
issue.
can I go back?
Sure.
Let's to the South High project. You stated earlier that within the hour you received some news that perhaps the payback in terms of harvesting the water vis-a-vis buying local water was not going to be as substantial as we had anticipated, correct? We still, though, recommend including the 100,000 gallon rainwater harvesting as a green technology that will allow us to water the fields during the summer.
Correct.
And we still believe that because one of the advantages is obviously if we have our own water, we can water whenever we wish as long as we have the water, even though perhaps we would not be able to use city water because of restrictions. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so it's still in terms of, it may not save us as much money as we anticipated, still a green technology, still very worthwhile for this project, and still under the budget that we had projected in the first place.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. Again, it's not just about saving money, but it's also about taking care of our asset, which means watering if the domestic water isn't available.
Yeah.
Okay, perhaps the most complex of issues is the synthetic field. And let me take you through that for a minute and make sure that we all understand why we're talking synthetic fields, a second synthetic field when in the concept plan that was a tier 2 item, and why are we talking about perhaps accelerating it. And again, we're not asking for a vote tonight. We're looking for understanding of where the board might be, and if it's perhaps go with the synthetic field, we'd come back with a recommendation next month. Because there are some dollars involved in here and some decisions to make with design and get our architects and engineers moving along. When we first reconsidered a synthetic field at North High School, the West practice field, it was because it appeared that the current stormwater ordinance would not be changed, and we'd have to build a stormwater detention system on that side. And really, the stormwater detention system is the majority of the cost of a synthetic field. You can't have a synthetic field under current ordinances without a stormwater management system. And so our thinking is and was, if we have to build the detention system, we can build the synthetic field on top of it, offset a good portion of that cost by not building the grass field and putting a rain harvest system and an irrigation system in, and get a synthetic field for very little cost. And in a few minutes, I'll ask North High School to talk about pros and cons of that synthetic field, but there's plenty of pros and cons beyond the fact that it would be relatively inexpensive. Now it gets a little bit more complex in that what happens if the ordinance, the new ordinance, the proposed ordinance passes and we don't need to build a detention basin? Then we lose some of that cost initiative. We still have all the other pros and cons, but I should say pros, there are not many cons. But we still should think about building that synthetic field even if we don't have a detention system. The cost to offset isn't as great, but we recognize that we wouldn't be paying that $700,000 for that detention system, and that could help pay for that synthetic field. What I'd ask is Denise Kavanaugh, our AD at North High School, to talk for a moment about value given beyond the fact that there's a cost associated or a savings associated with having a second synthetic field at North High School.
Thank you. So my charge tonight is to explain the value, which all of you know the situation we're in as far as the land and everything, and we're certainly appreciative of everything we have thus far, so I don't want anyone to think we're getting greedy or something like that. But I kind of marked down a few points, and maybe there's some ahas that maybe you didn't know, or some added features which would make you go, oh, the value is a little bit different than I thought. Well, first of all, safety. As you may or may not know, a lot of our teams in the fall and in the spring are off-site. So our trainers, it's very difficult for our trainers. We have two where we have to try to make them go all over the place. And so it's difficult for our athletes to get taken care of on campus. And in some situations, we have to have walkie-talkies off-site and whatnot. So for safety reasons, that's one big one, to have that training room accessible, and this would bring that back to campus, obviously. Managing events efficiently, if we always know there's another site on campus, as you know, sometimes parents and whatnot, it's helpful when they're near the campus in case something happens, and when they're off campus, we get into a little bit of a jam in trying to get out there to take care of some situations. Oak Park River Forest, just so you know, which is a similar campus to us, they did add an additional turf. And John Stelzer, who's the AD there, I kind of called him to ask him some of the differences with that. And he said the biggest appreciation he has is that the training staff is accessible to the athletes all the time, closer back at home. I'm speaking for my colleague Courtney White, who is our physical education department chair, and he has some points here that I want to talk to you about. First of all, we have 2 field stations for physical education right now. So counting the new field that will be done. The 2 field stations would increase to 3, and most schools have about 7 to 8 outdoor field stations. So that one is very valuable to the physical education department. The 40 students in the classes approximately, this would offer more opportunities for the classes for them for different types of classes outside, where right now they're fitting the needs based on the facilities. The weather, which Mr. Kology is going to talk about in a little bit, causes more problems where we can't use the fields then. So the turf obviously adds that station practicality for the physical education department in the consistent access for those classes. So those are some mentions on that part. As you know, we use the Park District fields, and they're in control of telling us when or when not we have them. So the changes within our department are pretty serious as far as if the weather, we have to wait and prolong games and access to their fields. Sometimes you have to cancel the events altogether. I would say the biggest issue with that is communication for our parents when we're off site and where you're going to go next or where the next game's going to be. And that's for soccer, lower level softball, and lower level baseball. And then lastly, the cost factors, just so you know, and this is like an estimate, but we ran the numbers. The transportation, supervision, and athletic training is about $15,000 to $18,000 a year for our school, just to practice or go off campus. So those are pretty big cost factors. So those are just some basic items, and then I would welcome anyone to email me if you want more specifics about what exact sports are off campus, on campus, when I have that data as well. So Mr. Coolidge, I think, is going to come up and talk a little bit about the weather and how that affects the need for turf.
Good evening. It's great to talk about a turf field when you already have one, so this will be easy good points. On my way here, as I was leaving the building, it was nice to see program already benefiting from the turf that we have on Carson's Field already. Our soccer team was already trying out using the field in end of February, so it's a big thing for our programs. And normally at this time of the year, we're a good month away before I start pulling tarps off. Snow's still down usually, where a program can actually get on a field, and being a month ahead of time really helps out that program, gets them on the field, and they're doing things earlier than they would be. One of the biggest things would be the damage to a field, a grass field, if it rains and we play a football game or a soccer match, and we go a whole night, even if it's an under-level program. The damage to the field, it's a lot of cost and it's a lot of time to rebuild it and get it back to shape where it's looking good, where it won't have mud in the middle. So the rebuilding of a field is time-consuming and cost-consuming. So having a turf field helps that out. The impact that I have on PE classes, especially on grass fields, in the least amount of space that we have at North, I'm constantly pushing stations off the field so I can get on it to mow the grass, line it for an event that's happening that night. So I'm always impacting, moving them, so they might even lose a station as it's a nice day out. So if I get back on the field and if they start playing, they've got to move and go to another station. So I'm impacting them on that. Irrigation costs for a turf field, you would not need it. Obviously, if we went with our grass field, there'd be irrigation costs and possible rain harvest cost that Marty mentioned. So that would be a reduction. Also, on a grass field, we turf it with some tarps in the wintertime. So I'll seed it, fertilize it, tarp it for the winter, and then wait till spring to pull it off. So there would be cost to put tarps on it. I think that covers the maintenance and grounds aspect of it.
Let me add another positive point with a synthetic surface. With a synthetic surface, the surface is flat. The water drains down through it. We don't have to crown it. Water doesn't have to drain off. So not only does it drain quicker and we can use it, but it allows us multi-purpose use of that field. So we can have a practice field, a PE field, a soccer field, and we can inlay a softball field on that same field. And that would mean bringing back onto our campus lower level softball, which we don't have on campus now. So a synthetic surface will allow multi-purpose use, whereas a grass field would not. You can't mix, you can't put a softball field on a grass field that is also intended to be used for football or soccer.
Excuse me.
I hadn't mentioned the cost before, and I'd rather not get into the numbers, though we have them, and we'll tighten them up as we move along. But a couple things that I think are worthwhile saying. Again, there's an offset for the cost of the turf, a synthetic field, by not having to build a grass field, put an irrigation system in, and a rain harvest system in. And I mentioned before whether or not we have to build the stormwater detention system. Fortunately, our budget would handle the synthetic field, and it would handle the stormwater management at its worst case scenario, and we would still be under budget. So it's not a budget question, it's a value question and a use question. Okay, and I know I'm loading a lot on you, and please ask questions anytime. I've got 2 more items to talk about, but
okay,
go right ahead.
I heard lots of pros. I heard one con in terms of cost. What are the other cons to doing the artificial turf field? In fairness, as we weigh this, there are certainly some other negatives.
There is, and it's balanced off with some pros. There is a cost to a synthetic field. We know that their life expectancy is 10 to 12 years. We're on the third generation, I believe, of synthetic fields. There's no history on the third generation, which are better than first and second generation.
I remember hearing 7 to 10 years.
Right. The first couple of generations were under 10 years. We fully expect over 10 years out of what we bought last year and what we would specify this year.
Okay.
But there's no history yet.
All right.
Okay, it's a bit newer.
But there is at some time in the future, the board will have to replace the surfaces, whether, we hope for 10 years or 12 years, but it's not a situation where it'll be 30 years from now before we replace the surface. That's not realistic. We will have to replace those surfaces.
Now, it's just the surface, so it's half the price of the original
You
installation.
mentioned before the biggest cost is the detention underneath. So
correct, and that would all remain the same. You peel up the carpet, put a new carpet down, and you're off and running again.
Does that have a lifespan, the detention system underneath?
100 years or more.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a fixed structure, concrete underground, not much to it. Now, I mentioned that even though there's a con, we'd have to replace it at some point in the future. Some of that would be offset by significantly reduced maintenance. As Jim was talking about a few moments ago, we wouldn't have to mow it, we don't have to line it, we don't have to irrigate it, we don't have to take care of those systems.
Certainly, but it's not like you can take those funds every year, set them aside for the future artificial turf replacement, can we, or can we?
Well, we can. Mark's shaking his head, so.
So that would be something that would be part of this, is that you'd want to plan for that.
Reduce fees.
And we can't forget that a grass field not only requires significant amount of maintenance, but it has to be replaced every so often too.
Certainly.
Now, I've been here 28 years and I've rebuilt most of the grass fields, and the master site plan that we're performing today is replacing and rebuilding grass fields. So they have a life expectancy also.
Of course.
Might be 20 or 30 years.
Replacement cost is
and
substantially less, though,
well,
with turf, depending on what you're doing.
Yes, yeah, and how deep you have to go. Right. All right, so that's the synthetic field situation.
Martin, I have a question about that
Sure.
too, about the drainage and water storage. If the new ordinance does pass, but we choose to put in increased drainage to handle the artificial surface, will that drainage cost as much as it would have cost to comply with the ordinance, or will that be a lower number?
It's a much lower number. A full-blown stormwater detention system, like we built last year at North High School, is about $700,000. If with the revised ordinance, we wouldn't need that $700,000 fixture. We would need a what's called an under drain system. You let the water come through the surface, the artificial surface, and you grab it with piping, and off it goes. But you don't have to hold it, detain it under the new ordinance if that passes. Under drain system is under $200,000. So instead of $700,000, we're at about $140,000. So that's where we come up with that $550,000 differential on whether we have to build a detention or not. So we still have to take rainwater and do something with it, but we wouldn't have to store it.
And so we need more detention than we would for a grass field, but considerably less than we would have had to have been required under the current ordinance.
Well, as the new more or less, as the new ordinance is written, we wouldn't need really detention at all for
the grass field, right?
For a grass field, or the new ordinance, or for a synthetic field. But both of them, you still have to get the water out of there.
Right.
Just one other pro with this that I don't think did get mentioned is that it doesn't. If we don't do this, we were looking to do something in partnership with District 58, and using some of those fields at Herrick. And we've already talked about potential cost savings, you know, that offset by not having to do some of those things. But the other caveat being that if in the future District 58 decides to use that land in a different way, it puts our ability to use that in question. And so it kind of creates a you know, a future problem for us if we go down that route potentially. And whereas doing artificial turf avoids that unknown. Fair to say?
Fair to say, and I believe some of the recent discussions in District 58, according to Mr. Zander, the superintendent, is their own facility studies and they're looking at their own properties and how they configure the different buildings. There is a possibility in the future that
They would want to build.
we would not be able to implement the plan that we've talked about with the district just at the administrative level in the future. The one other advantage, when Marty talked earlier about the artificial surface being flat, that is an advantage in terms of putting a softball field or laying a softball field on to the soccer field. If it was a grass field, the soccer field would have to be crowned, meaning that would be problematic for the softball field. So, in effect, we do have that option with that surface to have a softball field, which would enable us to have the softball program on the campus and not off campus.
And that precludes the need for the Herrick property.
That was the primarily our interest in doing work at Herrick, yes.
Thank you.
And that work was going to cost us what? About 250?
We thought 400,000.
400,000. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
That's a big difference.
Well, and if you factor that in, the synthetic field becomes
less expensive.
Well, no, there's actually a savings.
Yeah, I
Build
know.
a synthetic field and save money.
Right.
Some questions were asked about what would be the possibility of building a synthetic field sometime down the line on the west field. And you could do that, but unfortunately, we would be putting several $100,000 into a grass field only to, in the near future or the far future, tear it out in order to put a synthetic field in. So while it can be physically done, it doesn't make a lot of sense to go grass now and then sometime down the line go synthetic. It would make more sense financially to make that decision today, not today, but now. Either go for it or don't go for it.
Do you want to get feedback from the board on this now, or do you want to move on to the other items?
Do you want a consensus? Is that what you're
Well,
looking
yeah, not final consensus, because it's not a voting item. In my own opinion, it'll be subject to seeing the actual hard numbers before voting.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but the idea is to get a general sense. Anybody want to jump in and give a sort of an initial sense, not set in stone?
I did want to say, I did want to ask a question.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
So at some point, someone's going to say, well, when do we get the second one at South?
I was going to say, yeah.
And so what would our reply to that be?
Well, I think Denise answered that really in a kind of a roundabout way. We believe through our studies that a synthetic field offers a playing field quadruple what a grass field would offer, because it drains quickly, you can get on it, you can't tear it up when it's wet, you don't have to lay it fallow for some period of time and regrow grass and shut it down. You can use it so much that a synthetic field can supplant up to 4 regular grass fields. And with North High School being short of those fields, having only 3, if this new one is grass, while I wouldn't say add 3 more to make it 6 by going synthetic, the school can use it that way. They can use it so much more significantly. And that doesn't even quite catch them up to what an average high school of this size with the number of PE and athletic programs has. That's still insufficient to have that many playing fields. But it would get us much closer by going
So
synthetic.
the argument would be that South already has a lot of those
Yeah,
capabilities,
that didn't really
where North
answer the
does not.
question.
I'm just,
I would say, and I'm a South Sider and the father of a graduate of Downers Grove South, I believe I can anticipate South will ask that question. And perhaps in the future, we would put a second field at South. We may not be able to afford that with the remainder of the $14.8 million for that we have spent on this part of the project. Frankly, the second artificial surfaces were, I believe, in the plan. If we were able to spend I think we costed out the plan at about $25 million, understanding that a significant part of that we were not able to afford with the money from the sale of the district property in Woodridge. And in fact, the second artificial surface at North was not part of the initial proposal, and that was as much an equity issue as a cost-saving issue. What's happened, though, and as this has played out, is that second artificial surface has become a more attractive option, and justified in the sense that we will be able to bring more programs back on the campus, and for all the savings in transportation, the savings in the students' time, and all the other issues we deal with because we have so much off campus we address. But I agree that we will have to answer the question, what are we going to do at South sometime in the future? And I don't have a ready answer as I sit here, and I know I will hear about it.
Right.
that's why I brought it up.
Thank you.
Might as well hear it first.
Can you foresee a situation where, are we currently having to take any of our students at South off-site for anything? Is there potential that we would be using, we could use that second field at North from time to time for some events that we would normally have to go off-site somewhere else for South, that we could then, that would be then available?
We share a lot now. We help each other out, and we're happy to do so. And I think this might be the first time we haven't shared door hopper and off-site for soccer. I think this is the first time Barry, the head soccer coach at South, is figuring out a plan with their main field. But otherwise, absolutely, it makes sense. I'm a South grad. I want to help them out too. But if we all can benefit, it's what's best for the district. So we would be happy to do that.
Well, my point in bringing it up is that it's a resource available to the entire district, and I just wanted to get that on the record. So.
Well, and we're not canceling out ever putting grass field on that practice field.
Artificial.
Yeah.
I think a more logical question is if there's going to be some new detention variances that we're going to, that's going to come into our benefit, and we don't have to have these huge rain harvesting, barrels, why not look at a second potential field at South? If we don't have to go down, we can have some cost benefit there.
Well, I was just going to mention Lake Park. I was at the football game this fall, and they have an extra field, right?
Have an extra field, but none of it is artificial.
It isn't?
No.
It looked like it was.
Hinsdale schools have 2 fields.
Yes.
Well, just to maybe get us back on track, I'll start off and say that initially I thought that the second field idea was a good idea in the event that we had to spend the money anyhow to do some stormwater detention. We might as well get something for it. I think I said something to that extent last time. And since I kind of started moving the other way in terms of, hey, it looks like we might not need to spend that money, and so if we do, is there a good argument for moving this up from Tier 2 to this Tier 1 phase? And I have to say that I've just this week become more favorable to the idea, I think, in terms of the discussion and the reading, and particularly the notion that that we were going to be relying on the being able to use the property there at Herrick, and to some extent, and knowing that that is something that we can't just say that's for sure, and at some point may be an issue for us. And so having control, as much as I want to cooperate, and there can still be cooperation, but being able to keep this on campus, it has some major advantages. So withholding any determination until dollars are here, but my sentiment right now is that it looks like a very promising idea.
Other thoughts?
I would agree.
I agree.
Mr. Mattoon?
I agree. I think the independence from Herrick, and especially balancing the inequity between the two campuses, and really those, as a parent and a coach, having to move your kids from campus to campus, for instance, where I teach, we don't have a swimming facility, so we always have to go to COD and this and that. It's just such a pain, and I think that is I think that's a cost benefit that really can't be stated, more positively. But I think if all those things are equal, I could support it.
Yeah, I also agree, subject to seeing the hard numbers. I think everybody's on the same place on that. Yeah, so.
Really appreciate the work you've done on it, Mari.
Okay.
Is there more to the report?
This will be much faster, much quicker. On our website and published in the newspaper is the North High School summer of 2012 master site plan construction schedule. I just wanted to run through that very quickly, very briefly. Won't go into all of the details, but I want to make sure that everybody understands what we're doing here. Again, although the stormwater detention system situation is not clear, we feel that we can work around it and through it. What we also know is that the amount of work we have to do, whether it's this year or next year, or phased in some way, is too much work for 10 weeks of summer. And when we look at the timeline and we start at when it needs to be complete, it's substantially complete, that's August 24, so that we can open school. And that's the parking lots. Whether it's a synthetic field or a grass field, that won't be ready by that date. But the school has their stadium, and then the grass field that we built last summer will be ready. It's the parking lots that have to be removed and rebuilt. And so backing up from August 24, when do we have to start this work? May 7th. Now that's, and some of that work is disruption of the east parking lot. And we've been working closely with the school. They're working with the village in order to have a plan in place if we disrupt the east parking lot before school is out. If we start on May 7, it's possible we'll get in, as we excavate from the north end of that property onto the south, and we may get into that parking lot and disrupt some of the parking there and move some of those cars, maybe as many as 80 parking spaces for a week or 2 weeks. We don't know, because we don't know how quick the contractor can work, and we don't know if there's disruption from bad weather and whatnot. To protect ourselves from the possibility, slight possibility, that that parking lot would not be ready when school starts, we won't take out the west parking lot until after the east parking lot is finished. We'll also be using the west parking lot during the summer for storage of spoils, dirt, that we're going to reuse and save money. And it'll also be a construction zone for storage of equipment and materials as we work on the east field and the west field. The second piece is the west parking lot has to be finished also by August 24, because that is the bus drop-off parking lot. It's multifunctional and it has other components to it, but its primary goal is to get the buses off the city streets and onto property that we can control and get the kids curbside drop off of the buses in a safe environment. So we have to have that west parking lot done. So again, that starts on May 7 also. The washroom facility, we can get started on that May 7 also. That won't disrupt school and it won't disrupt traffic. Once graduation occurs on June 1, then we can go into the Prince Street, vacated Prince Street, and remove that and do some underground utility relocations and rebuild that into the plaza. And that would be done, that would be completed or substantially completed also by August 24. And just for clarification's sake, substantial completion is a legal term that we use in construction. And its term is that whatever you're building is functional as intended. Doesn't mean it's complete.
Right.
There'd be landscaping and some things like that to do. So construction would continue beyond August 24. And in fact, once those 2 parking lots are finished, then we would take out the existing west parking lot, and then we would either build that synthetic field or that grass field. And in all likelihood, if it were synthetic field, it would not be finished in the fall, and we'd have to lay the carpet, the last piece of it, in spring, and that's about 2 weeks worth of work. If it's grass, it wouldn't be ready for 1 more year as we hold that field back and let the grass grow. So that's the construction schedule, and we've aligned it with how the county is working on their ordinance and how the village will required to work through the ordinance. And at some time in the middle of the summer is when we would know if we have to build based on the existing ordinance, stormwater detentions, or if we can divert our design over to no detention, save all that money. But either way, we can wrap that project up and return it to the school for function by August 24.
Any other questions about this? Any more to your report?
One more.
One more.
Promise, just one more.
Get that in a minute.
We took a second and third hard look at the neighbor's request to flip the west parking lot. Put the west parking lot on the north side of that parcel where it is now, as opposed to putting it on the south side. And again, we came back with a clear understanding that the location of that parking lot is best suited on the south side of that property. It meets all of our goals that we established in the concept plan. It belongs on the south side, and with that in mind, that's how we're proceeding with the designs. Now, with respect to our neighbors and conversations we've had with them, with our understanding of where their concerns are and our ability to address some of those concerns, it is our intention to include those neighbors in the design of the landscaping, which has not started yet and won't start for another few weeks. And we did that same thing with the south parking lot located at North High School 11 years ago, where the neighbors got involved. And we have committed $200,000 to additional landscaping to help beautify the area. We also have been asked by the neighbors to share with them the construction schedule in detail and keep them advised of what's going to happen, because there will be a lot of work in that area.
Right.
And while it's all on our property, construction vehicles are on public streets. Right. And so it's our intent to conduct one or more as needed construction meetings to make sure that our neighbors understand what we're doing now and what we'll be doing down the line, and then they will have contacts in order to get back to us if there's concerns that they have with how things are going. If there's things that they're not happy with, they know who to come to and talk and try to get it resolved. And along with that, the village has indicated they would like to be involved with those construction meetings also.
That makes sense. Very good.
Any final questions? And anything that was presented in item 7F? If there's no further questions, we'll move on to 7G, Freedom of Information requests.
We've had 5 Freedom of Information requests this month. Mr. Stalen fulfilled 4 of those requests with the information requested, and we have denied the 5th request.
Okay, the next item on our agenda, item 8, the
Mr.
consent
White,
agenda.
if I may?
Yes.
I'm wondering, in the event that Mr. Fieldman had to leave because he wasn't feeling well, I know he was going to make a presentation about the stormwater utility. I know that the information was in our packet, that people maybe had a chance to review it already. I know that he came tonight with the hope that he'd get some sort of feedback from us, and I'm wondering if the board would entertain the idea of
It's on the agenda, we should probably talk about it.
of just giving him that
Back it
feedback. Hopefully he's well. I feel badly that he had to leave, but I'm sure he has people he's reporting back to and would appreciate us giving him that information.
The reason I didn't bring it up earlier, I wasn't certain that he wanted to make a report before.
I was wondering that.
Okay.
Yeah. Is
He
there,
didn't, he wanted to make a report to the board before he got that
Yeah.
feedback.
is there a necessity to do it tonight, or would March
Well, I
be-
initially thought that the village council wanted some sort of letter from the board sooner than later, but
That'd be hard to
I
do.
don't know how critical it is that he gets this information tonight. I suppose if it's an absolute critical matter, we could add this to the workshop agenda on the 14th.
Okay.
But the reason I didn't bring it up earlier was just even based on his note, I think he has an intent on making the presentation
Okay.
before. The board has, all of you have received the information and have access to the website and looked at some of the other materials the village has prepared. So I think we could offer an opinion. It's just that I have a sense that
I
he
would rather
wanted.
it be after we hear.
There
from
are
him.
some questions that we really don't have answers to yet. For example, the credits. We don't know how much of our, should the stormwater utility pass, and we receive a charge for the utility, how much, what percentage of credit would we receive?
Yeah.
And I think that's a critical piece. We don't know what that is yet. Perhaps he'd be able to talk about that in his presentation.
I was looking forward to that discussion, actually. I just know he had to leave early. I feel badly that he did and wanted to be helpful if possible, but maybe we can.
I think actually, considering what was just said, for us to express our opinions without all of the information, those opinions might be premature. We might not want to lock ourselves into something, not knowing the whole story. So we will move on to the consent agenda. Item 8.
Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, items A through E. The chair invites a motion for the approval of the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Okay, Member Beckman moves to approve the
Second.
consent. Member Davenport seconds that. Call that vote, please.
Julia Beckman.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Keith Mattoon.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Deb Boyle. Aye. Bill White.
Aye, the motion passes. The consent agenda has been approved. Those items have been approved. Item 9, recommendations for action. 9A, approval of lease purchase of tablet computers for teachers. Dr. McDonald?
Thank you, Mr. White. We are in the process of purchasing individual devices for our teachers to use as we implement the wireless network that the district installed last summer and is working on a pilot project to implement at this time. Mr. Stalen is going to make a recommendation about about leasing that equipment versus buying it and the advantages thereof. So I'll let Mr. Stalen take the floor.
Thank you. First, we are very excited about being able to implement this part of the strategic plan in this way. The original plan was to have a pilot group, and part of the pilot group's charge was to determine what kind of laptops or what kind of devices would best meet the needs of our teachers and students in terms of teaching the students. And their site visits made it very clear to them. And Rod, I think, Rousseau, and the district technology team will very likely ask to be put on a board agenda in the next several months so that they can demonstrate the laptops for you, the tablets for you, so they can show you how they were easily convinced that this is the right device. Tonight's conversation, though, really is, since we believe we've already kind of crossed that threshold, what we would like to do is, rather than, the original plan was do the pilot and then the next fall roll out the laptops or whatever devices, could be different devices. Now that we know that, we're trying to get a lead on that process. There's some work that needs to be done to the machines themselves in terms of installation of software and ghosting them so that they're set up the same for everybody, and so that they also have the software that works with devices like smart boards and projectors that are in most of the rooms, or many of the rooms. And so it gives the tech team an opportunity to jump on that and do that now. And also will, the plan, I believe, right now is to, in May, issue the laptop tablets to the teachers so they have an opportunity to get a little familiar with them, ask questions before they break for the summer, and then have the summer to experiment with them, and so then when they come back, they're ready to hit the ground running. And so we're really excited about being able to move this up a little bit, and we think it'll be have a big impact on success of this rollout. And so the issue that while you have the finance guy trying to talk like a techie, we're both nerds, but different planets that we come from, is really the financing part or the budgetary part of this. We have used a lease in the past for portable labs. We've used it for real heavy technology in the past, like not a mainframe, but the replacement of the mainframe with a different system. So when we have an asset like this that has multiple years of use, we do try and feather the costs out over that period of time. I typically, honestly, don't like leases because we have dollars we could fund this with, and we are not earning a lot on our investments. And so in that regard, we're paying more interest out than we would be earning on those funds. But a big advantage to these leasing technology in particular is the aftermarket work that these companies do. Not everybody does it. There's a handful of companies that do resell the product for you, and during the course of the lease, they will be looking for a buyer through that period of time and setting it up so that at the end of the lease, they have a ready buyer, which means that we'll get more dollars back out of it. They take the machines, they wipe the hard drives clean. They give us a certificate guaranteeing that they've been cleaned of all of our data and software, and so and they will also let us, with this type of lease that we're proposing, let us go several different ways. And one is that we could just buy the machines for $1 at the end of 3 years, just because we decide we want them, or we could keep them an extra fourth year, buy them for $1, keep them for an extra fourth year, and then they'll remarket the machines a year later, so it gives us like a fourth year option. The technology team believes that 4 years is probably all of that. These laptops will really have the highest level of use for us. And currently what we do with technology in this district is the new technology goes to the buildings and the old technology comes to the ASC. We rotate it around. So I have a machine in my office that's probably 4 or 5 years old, but it's just really reading the H drive. So it's just a monitor. So it doesn't do much. So it doesn't need to. We go, that's just what we've done. Well, when we have 445, we really won't have another group to roll these around to. So it's more than likely we'll either just get rid of them, want to get rid of them and replace them with new technology, new machines at that time. Or very possibly even sell them to our staff, and that's something that what this company will do. They will actually they have a separate arm. Actually, I think they subcontract this out to a provider that just does this. They will actually repackage, and sell the machines, and the transaction would be between our teachers and them, not us, and they would handle all of that. And so that's really the big attraction of this type of an arrangement. We're actually paying about, I think overall $24,000 in interest, which is about $60 a machine over the life of it, but half of that really is for that resale repackaging piece. And then at the end, we get 85% of whatever they are able to sell those machines for, and they certify that back to us. So that actually would very likely offset all, if not more, than all of the interest that we pay. So we would probably get somewhere in the area of $50,000 to $60,000 at the end of this back, which would offset the interest costs that we paid through it. So if this was a car and we were going to keep it 11, 12 years like I do, we wouldn't lease it because it doesn't pay for itself. But with technology, something that this is a new initiative for us. We want to keep it somewhat fresh, not every 2 years. Every 3 or 4 years we think is an appropriate span. And so the recommendation is to do it through a lease. We have a lease document. We're having our legal, our attorneys look at it just to review it, to make sure that we both understand it exactly right. And so I put the key terms in there. And what I would like you to do is take action on those key terms that we propose in the lease. I don't think those are going to change. And authorize the board president and, in this case, the board secretary and then the administration just to execute the documents as long as they meet those key terms. And so we're very excited about being able to get a jump on this whole process. And this helps us bring the cost over 3 years. It's about 150, I think it's 159,000. I should have my glasses on here. $154,000 a year for this. And what we would do in the course of the next several years, after the state resolves our issues, hopefully, just build this into a line item for us for technology, expecting to refresh it every several years. So that's what we're asking for, and so if you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Before a motion and deliberative debate, are there any factual questions or information for Mr. Staley?
I have a couple.
Yeah, go ahead. Absolutely.
First, how would repairs be handled?
They're going to have a 3-year warranty on these machines that'll cover that. Actually, by getting them up a little bit early, we're going to probably be falling out of the warranty in the last several months because it would have been a full 3 years match. If we got them in September, we would have had them September through. But there'll be a month or two that
it's
they're not under warranty.
Same warranty whether you're purchasing or leasing. So,
right.
But will PCN handle the repair aspect?
No, we go back right back to the manufacturer for those. Yeah, it's the same. It's actually the same as owning them. They're just financing it and providing the resale part of it.
So how long has PCN been in business?
Actually, they started more than 15 years ago. They were called Medical Municipal Finance, and we actually did a small lease with them prior in the district for some technology. And the individual, he now lives on the East Coast, actually, who is our representative and who we have a connection with. But he was born in Addison. He's Chicago roots here, and he actually was in last week to go through some of the finer details. And they service, they have this type of an arrangement. Gave me a list of about 30 school districts that they are working with currently, mostly high schools, but a lot of elementaries as well. And so I did make contact with those business managers, and they follow through. They think that we'll be pleasantly surprised at the end that they'll probably be able to get more than what they tell us in the value for these. They're saying somewhere between $125 and $150, and they're possibly expect $175 to $200 in terms of the selling price when they're done, because these are not real. They're not cutting edge machines, but they're pretty powerful machines.
Other factual questions before we have a motion and deliberation? The chair would invite a motion either for or against the recommendation.
I will move that we approve the recommendation of the administration for the lease purchase of these tablet computers for teachers.
Member Beckman moves.
Second.
Member Pavlicek seconds. Now we're open for deliberation.
Good stuff.
Is anybody against it? Let's say that.
Sounds like a grand plan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, going once, going twice for objection. Call the vote, please.
Julia Beckman.
Aye.
Terry Pavlicek.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Keith Mattoon.
Aye.
Bill White.
Aye, the motion carries. You have your direction.
Thank you very much.
Next item, 9B, award of bid package number 1, South High School Master Site Plan Phase 2.
Mr. Schock, a brief reiteration of what we talked about earlier.
There are, in this bid package, there are 8 trades, including masonry, excavation, utilities, painting, concrete, carpentry. And what you see in front of you are the low acceptable bids. We have a matrix of all of the bids that were submitted, but to save paper, or actually electronic space on those screens, you see just the low bids. Now, a couple of things happened in that bidding process. In the electrical bids are not included here. Half of the bidders messed up their bid submittals. They were confused and didn't read what they were supposed to do. And so 6 or 8 bids came in improperly put together. And we rejected all of the bids, and we're rebidding that one, and we'll bring that one trade for, by the way, this is all for South High School field. We'll bring that one trade back next month. It doesn't hurt the schedule. And we felt it was wiser to rebid it than try to decipher what these contractors did with the bid. And then one bidder on one of the trades did not meet specification. He was low bidder, but his numbers were so low they weren't even, they were way below what the work really would have taken. But without submittal of a performance or a bid bond, he had to be rejected. So that's the one where we took the next lowest bid. And the next lowest bid is a contractor we're familiar with, and his numbers are much more in line with what our estimates are for this project. Fortunately, and similar to last year, and an indicator of what's going to happen when we bid the bigger package at North High School, came in well under budget. And that is under budget even with the rain harvesting option in there, which was not budgeted.
Wow.
So we're excited that we're well under budget, and it's an indicator that when we see bids in March or April, we will continue that string of being under budget. So with that, we're recommending that the 8 low bids submitted in bid package 1 be approved for South High School reconstruction of the northwest field, which is the field right behind us, right behind this building.
As an informational question, if this bid were to be awarded, does this commit us to the rain harvesting, or is that something you're still looking into?
No, the rain harvesting was bid as an option item, and we can pull it out, and we know exactly what we would get back in dollars.
Okay, so what, an affirmative vote this evening would grant you basically the authority to make the decision to move ahead or not move ahead, depending on how the numbers look? Is that what we're talking about, or with the rain harvesting option?
Approving the recommendation tonight would include the rain harvesting system. We'll take a second look, and if for some reason we feel that it doesn't belong in this project, we'll pull it out before we sign the contracts.
Okay, so you have discretion to then decide whether or not to move forward with it?
Correct.
Okay. Just so I understand what the motion authorizes. Any other informational questions?
Okay, refresh my memory, because we talked about this a little while ago. If we save X amount of dollars at North with putting in the synthetic field and not having to put in the big drainage, situation, is there enough savings that we could put the synthetic field at South High?
You mean from the 14.8 million?
No, from the
remaining funds?
Right.
I'm
just asking.
Well, okay, I'm calling the 14.8 million the project fund, and then what's remaining.
Okay.
Right.
The answer is probably, but there's a caveat. If the current ordinance for stormwater management remained in place, the answer is no, because we'd have to build a detention system. So that synthetic field and detention goes to about $1.2 million. If the proposed ordinance is passed and we don't need a detention system, then that synthetic field becomes much less expensive, and it could possibly fit in that budget. But we would really need to look at those numbers closer to make absolutely certain of that.
But I guess I'm asking is if we approve this tonight, we are committed to this project. We can't change it to if we save the funds? I guess that's what I'm asking. Am I making sense?
It would, by awarding the contracts tonight, yes, it would be very difficult to switch gears in midstream. However, keep in mind, and looking back at the concept plan that was put together 2 years ago, we have other fields at South High School that need renovation, and any one of those couple other fields could be the one that is selected as a synthetic field. It wouldn't have to be this field here.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe in the plan, the field that's due east of this building was not
Not the one.
the field that we considered putting an artificial surface. I think that one would have been on the corner of Dunham and 63rd.
Right, the northeast
It's
corner.
going on a long access, and there are reasons for that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd also suggest that, you know, in as much as, you know, we have to be concerned about equity, we'd also we would probably ask South administration and staff if they had, you know, given the other options, because again, we really only built about half of what we had planned because of the amount of resources. It could be that South may wish, if that money was available, to do something else in the campus, and I would like to reserve that option for them as well.
I'm just asking.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Because I don't want to spend a lot of money on a field and then turn around like you had said earlier and rip it up and do something different.
Well, and just to add to why our recommendation would not be this field, but would be the northeast field. That's a combination multi-purpose field.
Right.
It's overlaid with softball fields. That would be prime candidate for a synthetic field, flat, and you can do multi-purpose.
Okay.
Now, another informational question. The largest item on here is for excavation and site utilities. If the new stormwater ordinance were to be in effect, would that number be lower?
No, this South High School is not the same situation as North High School. This is a maintenance project. It's an existing field that is permeable, allows water to drain through it. So even in the more restrictive ordinances, it does not require a stormwater management system. It still needs to have a collector system, which is what would feed the rain harvest tanks, but it does not require a significant stormwater management system. And again, it's because it's already permeable.
We're not changing anything.
Right, as opposed to being a hard surface going to, and vice versa.
Well, the governance question is basically, could we save money by waiting? And the answer is no.
That's the correct answer.
Any other questions?
Just a comment that Mr. Shack graciously gave me a little bit of his time this afternoon, and I looked over the bid matrix and talked to him a little bit, and I want to voice my support of what's being offered tonight.
Okay. Well, with that, the chair would invite a motion.
I'm so moved that we approve that we approve these
bid package number one.
Package number one.
South High School Master Plan Phase 2.
It's Phase 2.
Member Davenport moves. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Member Vice President Boyle seconds. Any discussion? Is anyone opposed?
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Keith Mattoon.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Julia Beckman.
Aye.
Bill White.
Aye. That motion carries. The award of bid package 1 has been approved.
Yay.
Next item, action on student disciplinary case. This was a matter we discussed in closed session. We cannot discuss the merits in open session. It's to, the chair would invite a motion to accept the report of Board Appointed Hearing Officer in the matter of student 1112.6 and expel student 1112.6 for the remainder of 2011-2012 school year. Do I hear such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Member Beckman moves. Member Mattoon seconds. Without further discussion, call that vote.
Julia Beckman.
Aye.
Keith Mattoon.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Bill White.
Aye. That motion carries. The motion to accept the report of the Board Appointed Hearing Officer has been granted or approved. The recommendation for action item 9D, action on employee resignation agreement. Once again, this is a matter we discussed in closed session, the facts and merits of which should not be discussed in open session. The chair would invite a motion to approve the resignation agreement of employee 9651873.
765.
Excuse me, 765, yes, 765-18738 as presented.
So moved.
Member Mattoon moves.
Second.
Vice President Boyle seconds. Without further discussion, call that vote.
Keith Mattoon.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Julia Beckman.
Aye.
Bill White.
Aye. The motion is granted or passed to approve the resignation agreement. Turning now to old business. Policy Committee report, second reading. Let's see, this is 5.180, temporary or permanent illness or incapacity. This is a second reading. Any board members have any concerns about this? Any questions? Otherwise, hearing none, I will move that we pass this policy. Normally, Member Kupka was second. She's not available. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Member Davenport seconds. Any discussion? Call that vote, please.
Bill White.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Keith Mattoon.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Julie Beckman.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Okay, turning to item 11, new business from the policy committee. This is divided into two.
Busy.
This is divided into two parts, A and B. B we'll talk about a little bit later. Those are simply technical corrections based upon the press release reports. But 9A, 11A, new business, is items that Ms. Kupka and I worked on quite extensively. Some of the ones that may be of particular interest, 5.125, communication through technology. This is a combination of the IASB recommended language and language that has come from our attorneys. And the policy committee worked to blend that together with help from Dr. Smith and Dr. McDonald. I think everybody take a close look at this. This is a rapidly evolving and complicated subject affecting the ability of our staff to communicate with our students and the public. This is first reading. If anybody has questions now, they can bring them up, or they can contact myself or Ms. Kupka or Dr. McDonald at any time prior to our next meeting.
I just had a quick question with regard to the definition of social media, which is the second item under definitions. Should we say something includes but not limited to? In case
I concur with that. That didn't occur to me.
In case new things come up, which they will probably next week.
Actually, I had sent an email similar, but I noticed in the definitions that the word includes means includes without limitation or includes but is not limited to.
Oh, above that.
So
right,
it's already,
but
that's already
I
been
know,
covered.
but
I had the same.
Yeah, I was
concern,
wondering,
but
should
then
we
I-
say it again, just in case? But
don't think it's a bad idea
if our
to say
legal authorities think that that covers it,
We can talk about, Nancy and I can talk about that.
Yeah.
That's
I can say
that's a valid thing. That's a
Yeah,
valid point to
exactly.
consider.
I think we wrestled with that in our own discussions.
you probably did, right?
Because this is just the beginning of what's going to be available.
Right.
Yeah, wow, what a fluid policy this is going to have to be.
Okay, let's see. Everything else, let's see. Was there anything in particular, Dr. McDonald, you think we should focus on, or just allow the board to
No,
read?
I believe we've been looking closely at the recommended policy language, and our procedure has been to look at that information first, compare it to what we have, and make the adjustments. In some cases, our policy language was decades old, and some it was non-existent. And there has been a great deal of new legislation in these areas, which is frankly requires us to make changes in the policy.
So basically, in the interest of time, seeing as a 9:45, I don't see much point in going through each of these individually unless somebody wants to, but they're perfectly free to read these, contact myself,
Sure.
contact Ms. Kupka or Dr. McDonald with any concerns about any of these. We will have another policy committee meeting prior to these coming back for second reading.
One point, Mr. President. I think something for all of us to think about as somebody who is in the trenches on a daily basis. I think this is excellent policy, but I think one loophole is students with handheld phones or devices that can access this technology without having to go through a school server or using quote-unquote our technology. I know it's probably a discipline issue or a school handbook issue, but I think that might be something that we might want to visit and take a look, that if students have their own and they're able to view these types of things, which I know our students are, how does that work as well?
I think this policy addresses employee use. Yeah.
Correct.
But you're right, that's something we at least should think about.
Well, they can do the same thing.
Yeah, it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that under current policy, students should not be using those devices during school. However, a great many do.
Well, and now it's increasingly they need to use them, right? As I understand it, in some classes or, I'm not sure, but that's always a possibility that it'll be part of the curriculum.
No, I know that this is for personnel, but down the line, that might be something that we
Yeah,
want to
I
take a look
agree.
No, increased technology. Okay, thank you, Member Mattoon. 11B, these are, in some ways, these basically, all of the changes proposed to the 4 policy sections described in 11B were originated from the press service. basically the recommendation of the IASB that we make these particular amendments. Unless a board member wants me to go into any one in particular, I would again suggest that everybody take a look at these and contact any of us with any questions or concerns. Okay, going once, going twice. These are first readings. Now we have our second reception of visitors. Any visitors stick around this long?
No, I think they got tired and went home.
Okay, communications and announcements. We have a Len report.
In the interest of time, the report that Dr. McDonald issued in his Friday superintendent report, I think, is more than sufficient.
Thank you. Do you want to add anything, Dr. McDonald, or just?
I'd only add that Lend has scheduled a dinner meeting on March 22nd for the purpose of discussing public pension reform. We were encouraged not only to invite boards of education and superintendents, but also representatives of the Teachers Association and the business manager, in fact, the local mayors. Because pension reform obviously affects a lot of public employees. So I wanted to highlight that was a request by Len to recruit persons to attend this meeting. And I believe Joanne has to have a count at a certain point in the future of how many are attending the meeting.
Well, then Joanne, I'll reserve right now.
Me too.
I'll send you an email tomorrow.
Never mind.
I'll send you an email tomorrow.
I think I already did.
For once, we're on top of things.
Yeah, really. Try to.
Hey, SACID?
Just very briefly, I was glad to see that we approved the SACID negotiated bid for Septran transportation. We had a discussion at our SACID meeting about that, and it was almost a unanimous vote on the part of all the districts. There was one that had a little reservation, but it was by far the best deal that we could get on that, the increases. And Septran does a great job, and there are very few carriers that accommodate special ed children, certainly as well as they do. And then very quickly, we do have, we did just approve tentative fee hikes, talking about fees, which will impact us, particularly with the Southeast Alternative School. I suppose the good news of that is that we have fewer students coming to Southeast for whatever the reason. The student body we're anticipating will go from 97 students this year down to 85 next year, and because it's a decrease in students, you have to raise the tuition because your staff is the same, and for high school students, you still have to offer the same array of classes that you would normally. So just a heads up that that increase will be about 7.5% for Southeast. And probably Evan already knows that, I don't know, but it's there. And just very quickly, the hearing impaired program will have even further increases, because the good news there is that the hearing impaired population is really decreasing because of cochlear implants, among other things, which is cool. Those kids can go back to the classroom. So we're going down from 135 students this year to 115 next year. It's still a lot, but that's a 20 student decrease, and largely because of the medical advances. That's my report.
Okay. Thank you. Now we move to the foundation report.
I really have nothing new to report. We are having a meeting next week, so we will.
Next meeting, we'll have more. Next
We'll hear.
Okay, 14 upcoming board meetings. March 3rd, Bagels with the Board at Downers Grove Library. Do we have volunteers?
I think I could.
Yeah.
March, I think I could do it this Saturday.
It would be this Saturday, yes.
I'll do it.
Okay, so Member Pavicic, Member Beckman?
Unless someone else wants to do it. Don't let me step on it.
I'm taking a month off.
I just did, so it's my
And
turn.
I'll be at a gymnastics meet too. Yeah.
And our next two meetings on March 14th on a Wednesday rather than a Monday. Everybody pay attention to that.
Yes.
Our next regular, a special workshop meeting will be March 14th. And then March 19th, very soon thereafter, the business meeting, and that will be at the South Campus. Does anybody have any further business to come before the board?
Don't forget the Open Meetings Act training, whoever signed up for that, 6:30.
We have to do that.
I will be out of
Tuesday.
town for that, so I will need to arrange to get the training at some other point. And I can work on that, I guess, with the IASB, I guess, get a schedule.
We'll make sure we have some kind of backup plan for that.
Okay.
And the deadline's the end of the year, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So
I
we
know,
have time.
I've got to hurry and do it.
Okay, anything else? And the chair would invite a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Member
Forward to-
Beckman moves, Member Pavlik